But if the Raiders are correct in what they are saying, they are about to make the biggest mistake of any team in the draft. Because the player that they've been connected to at pick number 6 is Ashton Jeanty, running back out of Boise State. And their GM, John Spytek, met with the media today before the draft. And I want you to hear this first, then I'll react to it. But he was asked basically, every mock draft has the Raiders drafting Jeanty. Basically, is this true? Is that the move you're going to make? Take a listen to what the Raiders GM had to say.
I mean, we just saw Saquon Barkley just change the Eagles in one year. Now they had a great team around him, and it was adding an elite player. And I think when you sit where we sit, I mean, the idea is to add elite players at any position. And I don't try to devalue any certain position. I mean, there's certain ways to build a team, and I don't know where we got to a place where we don't feel like running backs are valued.
I think the point he made last, running backs are valued, is correct. I mean, we saw it last year, right? Last year proved running backs do contribute to winning. Saquon Barkley, was the catalyst for that Eagles team going to the Super Bowl. Derrick Henry gave the Ravens offense a giant spark. Josh Jacobs going over to Green Bay gave that offense some real balance. I mean, on the other end of the spectrum, look at the 49ers and look how badly they struggled offensively with Christian McCaffrey basically missing all but a half of a game. That offense just completely fell off with their best player on it in CMC not playing. So running backs are valuable. There's no doubt about it. But here's one thing I think John Spytek is missing that would lead him to making the worst pick of the draft if they take Ashton Jeanty number 6 overall. And that's this. Great running backs only have an impact when they have a great offensive line in front of them. All those guys I just told you about, those impact running backs that changed the game this season, that led their offenses to being more explosive this year than in previous years. That's because those running backs had great offensive lines to block for them. And that's why if the Raiders draft Jeanty, it would be the worst pick of the first round. I would probably say the worst pick of the draft because they have the worst possible line they could trot out there to try to block for him. And if you don't have a line, you don't have a running back. I'm not trying to sit here and say the running back means nothing and you and I can run through holes and run through 2,000 yards, run for 2,000 yards the way Saquon Barkley did if we ran behind the Eagles' offensive line. You obviously have to have a lot of talent as a running back, but that talent is severely limited and diminished if there's no holes for you to run through. If you're constantly, as soon as you get the ball in your hand, having 3 or 4 guys right on you in the backfield because your offensive line can't move anyone off the ball. And that's what I'm afraid of, and that's what will happen if the Raiders draft Jeanty. He would be ineffective because there's going to be nowhere for him to go. Last year, this Raiders offensive line was the worst run-blocking offensive line in the entire league. They averaged a league-low 79.8 rushing yards per game. Their rushing attack was a complete non-factor. And the concerning part is they did nothing this offseason to change it. They are bringing back 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line. And the only addition they did make to quote-unquote bolster their O-line was signing Alex Kappa, former Bengals guard, who, according to PFF, was one of the lowest graded guards in the NFL last year. So they got someone who kind of fits right into what they did last year, and that was not block anybody. Really struggle at moving guys off the ball. So now your big plan, if you're the Raiders, is to draft Ashton Jeanty 6 and put him behind an offensive line that couldn't push me and Connor off the ball. That couldn't open up any holes at all last year. And you're expecting Ashton Jeanty to be as effective for the Raiders as he was for Boise State? To have him be worth that, to make it worth it? Like, what are you thinking? What are we doing? How does that make sense? If you don't have any holes to run through, you won't have any success. And Spytek, you heard him mention Saquon Barkley first and foremost right there in that little clip. You saw the impact Saquon had on the Eagles. Saquon is the perfect example as to why the Raiders should not draft Jeanty. Look, before we talk about Saquon with the Eagles last year, look at Saquon during his time with the Giants. He's a pretty good running back, right? Solid. Best season he had in New York was just over 1,300 yards. But he leaves the Giants, goes to a team in Philly with arguably the best offensive line in the league, if not top 3, and immediately rushes for 2,000 yards. Did Saquon Barkley get that much better overnight? Or was he just the benefactor of playing behind a much better offensive line? I'm going to go with the latter. So Jeanty, for how good he was last year at Boise State, a large part of his success starts with the 5 guys up front. If they're not blocking, Jeanty's not running. He breaks 1 million tackles. But the problem is he's going to have to break 5 or 6 tackles if he's on the Raiders just to get back to the line of scrimmage. Then what? So the Raiders' big plan, and I've liked their offseason so far. I love the hiring of Pete Carroll. I thought he's the perfect fit. They need a competent head coach that knows how to win, and that's who they got. It won't be a long-term solution, but it'll be a 2 or 3 year bridge to get at least the Raiders back to ground zero so they could start to build in the right direction moving forward. I love the hire of Pete Carroll. I liked the trade of Geno Smith. That was a solid option who brings competency again and again can have the Raiders tread water. They're not going to be a playoff team. Maybe once in 3 years they make the playoffs, sneak in as a 7 seed. Like, they're not built to win right now. They're building for the future. How does drafting a running back number 6 with the worst offensive line in the league make sense for building your future? Go get an offensive lineman. Go get someone that can protect your quarterback, that can move other defensive linemen out of the way, and can be a stalwart franchise cornerstone for the next decade. You're eventually going to have to draft a quarterback. Geno Smith's not the long-term answer. You're going to have a new quarterback, probably a young rookie quarterback, in there sooner rather than later. Do you think he'd rather have a standout tackle or a standout guard? Or would he rather have a running back that is good but is marginalized because he can't run through any holes because there's no holes to run through? I can't, but like, how is nobody else questioning this? Why am I the only one talking about this? I saw today, it's like a done, in terms of Spytek's answer, I should say, excuse me. But it felt like in the media, with mock drafts, with draft analysis, like, it feels like it's a done deal and it's assumed, Ashton Jeanty is going to the Raiders. Why is nobody questioning this as, are we sure it's the right move? Are we sure the Raiders with the worst rushing attack in the league last year should be drafting a running back in the top 6 who is solely dependent on an offensive line? How does that make sense? How is that in the best interest of the Raiders? It's not. I would argue right now, when you ask me, Ryan, what matters more in terms of having a good rushing attack? Is it the offensive line or the running back? I would argue it's the offensive line. I'd rather have 5 great guys blocking and an average running back in the backfield versus a great running back, an elite running back with 5 mediocre offensive linemen.